So today we're going to talk about respiration, and in order to understand that, it's important to understand what's called Boyle's law. This is the idea that the more volume you have, the less pressure there will be, and if you have less volume, the more pressure you will have. So in these pictures, the one to the left, there's more volume, more space, and so these molecules aren't bumping into each other, which causes less pressure. However, in the right picture, there is less space and less volume, and so as a result, these molecules bump into each other, and that causes more pressure. So when it comes to respiration, that Boyle's law is super important to apply, and we're going to start with inspiration. So Boyle's law in inspiration is the idea that you're going to have more volume and less pressure. And this happens through this main muscle in respiration called the diaphragm. On the top left picture, here's our lungs and our thoracic cavity, and right below that is where the diaphragm sits. The diaphragm is going to contract, pull down, making more space in your lungs or your thoracic cavity and giving you more volume there, which causes less pressure. And that less pressure is what's going to cause you to breathe air in to equalize your pressure to the atmospheric pressure on the outside of your body. There's a couple other muscles that can help. On the top right picture, we have what's called our external intercostals. So this is our ribs or our rib cage, which goes around our lungs. And on the outer portion, not attached to the sternum, is the external intercostals, which help elevate the rib cage to give you that more volume or more space within the thoracic cavity to inhale. And another one at the bottom, you have three scalenus muscles, which are labeled here. So one would be anterior, two is medius, and three would be posterior. They attach to the first two ribs to elevate those ribs as well, helping again in giving more space for you to have less pressure and be able to breathe that air in. It's important to note that you have up here in this top picture again, your trachea is where that air is going to come down, and it will go into what's called your bronchi or your bronchioles, which are all these branches. And at the very bottom tips is the alveoli, which is the structure where your actual exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen is happening in respiration. Then for your expiration for Boyle's law, this is where it's going to be less volume and more pressure. And so there's two ways. There's passive and active. Passive is just natural, happening naturally through elasticity and gravity recoiling those lungs. And then active requires muscles. And so here's some muscles that are required for that. One, we talked about external intercostals, but here on the top, now we're looking at our internal intercostals in green, which are directly attached to the sternum in the middle of your rib cage. And those depress the rib cage during expiration. At the bottom, we also have a couple other muscles. So right here in the middle is where your abs or your stomach would be. And so out here, the outermost muscle would be your external obliques. If you go in a layer, that would be internal obliques. And if you go super deep all the way in, that's your transverse abdominis. And all three of these muscles help compress the abdominal viscera to help aid in expiration. And so again, when you're exhaling, you started with a lot of air in your lungs from inhaling, and now you want to release that, and so your muscles are going to work to compress, or that elasticity and natural gravity is going to just recoil your lungs to make less volume, and now you have more pressure, so you let that air out, and that is how respiration works.